Your inner circle is not what you think it is. Right now, someone you trust, someone you confide in, someone you believe wants the best for you is actually celebrating your failures behind closed doors. They smile to your face while systematically undermining your confidence in your relationships and your opportunities. This person has mastered the art of disguising their resentment as concern, their sabotage as help, their criticism as honesty. And the most dangerous part, you've given them the exact access they need to derail your purpose. Simply because you haven't recognized the signs that have been right in front of you all along. The people closest to you have the greatest power to elevate or destroy your vision, and some have already chosen destruction. The greatest tragedy in life is not death. The greatest tragedy is to be alive and not know why. Similarly, the second greatest tragedy is to be surrounded by people you trust while being blind to those who secretly wish for your downfall, your success, your growth. Your vision depends greatly on recognizing who truly stands with you and who stands against you. I want to talk to you today about something that affects every single person in this room. Something that many of us sense but few have the courage to address. Have you ever felt that strange tension when certain people enter the room? That uncomfortable shift in energy that you can't quite explain? That, my friend, is your spirit recognizing what your mind may not yet understand. Truth is often uncomfortable, but discomfort is the price of growth. And today, we must grow in our understanding of human relationships, because your future depends on it. You see, not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. Not everyone who calls you friend has your best interests at heart. And understanding this reality isn't about becoming paranoid, it's about becoming wise. It's about protecting your purpose. It's about guarding your vision. Let me tell you a story about a young man I mentored years ago. This young man, let's call him Marcus, was brilliant, talented, full of potential. He started a small business that began to grow rapidly. As his success increased, so did his circle of friends and associates. Everyone wanted to be around Marcus. Long day, Marcus came to me troubled and confused. Despite his growing success, he felt strangely drained, constantly doubting himself. His confidence was eroding, though nothing in his external circumstances explained why. I asked him, Marcus, tell me about the 5 people you spend the most time with. As he described each person, a pattern emerged. One person in particular, someone Marcus considered a close friend and advisor, consistently made subtle comments that undermined Marcus's confidence. This person would say things like, "That's an interesting decision, but are you sure you're ready for that level of responsibility? Or your idea is good, but perhaps too ambitious for someone with your experience." These comments weren't outright attacks. They were subtle injections of doubt disguised as concern. And they were having exactly the effect this friend intended. They were making Marcus question his own abilities, his own vision. Once Marcus recognized this pattern, everything changed. He began to distance himself from this relationship. And within weeks, his confidence returned. His business continued to thrive. And he learned a valuable lesson about protecting his spirit from hidden negativity. This brings me to our topic today, recognizing the signs that someone close to you secretly harbors negative feelings toward you. This isn't about creating suspicion. It's about creating awareness. Because when you're aware, you can protect your purpose. The truth is, some people will dislike you without cause. Some will resent your gifts, your potential, your dreams. Some will feel threatened by your progress. And often, these people won't openly show their feelings. They'll mask them behind smiles and pleasantries while secretly working against you. Why does this happen? Because people fear what outshines them. They fear what reminds them of their own unfulfilled potential. Your light can sometimes make others uncomfortable with their own darkness. Before we go into the specific signs, you need to understand something fundamental. Recognizing that someone secretly dislikes you isn't about retaliating or harboring bitterness. It's about making informed decisions about who you allow to influence your life. You see, influence is more powerful than authority. Someone may not have direct authority over your life, but if they influence your thoughts, your confidence, your decisions, they're shaping your destiny. And you must be selective about who you grant that privilege to. I recall another story that perfectly illustrates this principle. There was a woman who was an accomplished pianist. She had trained for years and performed in venues around the world. But whenever she visited her hometown, she would spend time with a childhood friend who constantly made subtle remarks about how her career choice was unstable, how she was getting older and should consider something more practical. After these visits, the pianist would feel a strange heaviness, a doubt about her path that she didn't feel elsewhere. It took her years to recognize that her friend's words weren't coming from a place of concern, but from resentment that she had pursued her passion while her friend had abandoned similar dreams years ago. Once she understood this dynamic, she didn't confront her friend or end the relationship abruptly. Instead, she limited the influence this person had on her life. She shortened her visits. She changed what topics she discussed. She protected her vision by managing the influence. You see, that's the key. You don't need to dramatically cut people off, but you must wisely manage the influence they have over your life, your thoughts, your confidence. Now, before we examine the specific signs that someone might secretly dislike you, let me clarify something important. This isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone around you. This is about becoming observant. There's a profound difference. Suspicion comes from fear and often leads to isolation. Discernment comes from wisdom and leads to healthier relationships. What I'm teaching you today is the art of discernment. Think about it this way. When a skilled gardener notices that a particular plant isn't thriving, they don't immediately assume something is wrong with the garden as a whole. Instead, they examine the specific conditions around that plant. Is it getting enough sunlight? Is it being crowded by other plants? Is something in the soil affecting its growth? In the same way, when you notice that a relationship seems to drain rather than energize you, when you sense tension or inconsistency in someone's behavior toward you, you're not being paranoid, you're being perceptive. You're noticing patterns that need your attention. And just as the gardener doesn't rip out the entire garden because of one struggling plant, you don't need to dismantle all your relationships because some may contain elements of negativity. Instead, you need to understand what's happening so you can respond wisely. The first step in this process is awareness. You must learn to trust that inner voice that senses when something isn't right in a relationship. That voice isn't irrational fear. It's your spirit's intelligence warning you that something requires your attention. Many of us are being taught to ignore that voice. We've been told it's impolite or judgmental to question others' motives. But I'm telling you today that discernment isn't judgment, it's wisdom. And wisdom is essential for protecting your purpose. As we prepare to examine the 8 specific signs that someone close to you might secretly harbor negative feelings toward you, I want you to approach this information with an open mind and a guarded heart, open to truth, but guarded against allowing any revelation to make you bitter or resentful. Because the goal isn't to catalog enemies, but to cultivate authentic relationships. The goal isn't to become paranoid, but to become wise. The goal is to surround yourself with people who genuinely support your growth. your vision, your purpose, because your purpose is too important to be undermined by hidden negativity. Remember, your environment will either inspire you or expire you. The people around you will either fuel your vision or drain it. And recognizing who truly supports you and who secretly works against you is essential for protecting the gift that is your life, your purpose, your future. Now, let's talk about the first two signs that someone close to you might secretly harbor negative feelings toward you. And I want you to listen with both your mind and your spirit, because what I'm about to share may illuminate relationships that have confused you for years. The first sign is this: a noticeable change in communication patterns. When someone who once communicated with enthusiasm now responds with terseness or delay, pay attention. This isn't always obvious. It's not that they stop talking to you entirely. That would be too clear, too easy to recognize. Instead, it's a subtle shift in how they communicate. Think about it. Someone who once replied to your messages promptly now takes hours or days to respond. Someone who used to engage deeply in conversation now gives short, minimal answers. Someone who used to share their thoughts freely now seems guarded. Be careful about what they reveal. These changes don't happen without reason. When someone's communication with you shifts significantly, it's often because their feelings toward you have shifted as well. I remember counseling a couple of business partners who had been friends for years before starting their company together. One partner noticed that the other had begun responding to his ideas with increasing brevity. Conversations that used to flow easily became strained. Emails that used to receive thoughtful responses now got quick, punctual replies. The first partner assumed his colleague was simply busy, preoccupied with other aspects of the business. But as months passed, he sensed something deeper was wrong. When they finally had an honest conversation, he discovered that his partner had been harboring resentment over feeling that his contributions weren't valued equally. The changed communication was the first outward sign of an inward shift. The warning sign was there long before the problem became explicit. This applies to all relationships, professional, personal, family. When someone's communication pattern with you changes significantly, it often reflects a changed heart toward you. Now, this doesn't mean every delayed text message indicates hidden hatred. Life happens. People get busy. But consistent, unexplained changes in how someone communicates with you deserve your attention. Pay special attention to inconsistency when someone communicates differently with you than do with others. If you notice someone being warm, engaging, and responsive with others while being cold, distant, or delayed with you, that contrast tells you something important. I want you to think right now about your key relationships. Has anyone's communication with you changed notably in recent months? Do you sense a coolness, a distance that wasn't there before? That may be your first indication that something in the relationship needs attention. The second sign is even more revealing. Consistent criticism disguised as just being honest. There's a profound difference between constructive feedback and persistent criticism. One builds up, the other tears down. One focuses on specific actions, the other attacks character. One is offered with genuine care, the other with hidden satisfaction. Now, hear me clearly on this. True friends will tell you the truth. Even when it's uncomfortable, they'll point out your blind spots because they care about your growth. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people who find something wrong with virtually everything you do. People who seem to derive a strange satisfaction from pointing out your flaws, your mistakes, your failings. People who position themselves as just being honest when they're actually being consistently negative. Let me tell you about a young woman I'll call Sarah. Sarah was a talented artist who began showcasing her work publicly. Most feedback was positive. But one friend, someone she considered close, always had criticism ready. If Sarah used bold colors, this friend would suggest subtle tones would have been better. If Sarah explored abstract concepts, this friend would hint that perhaps she should stick to more conventional subjects. These weren't occasional suggestions offered with love. They were constant critiques that always positioned Sarah's choices as somehow deficient. And interestingly, this same friend was effusively positive about other artists' work, even when it was similar to Sarah's. The pattern revealed something important. This wasn't about honest feedback. It was about keeping Sarah in a place of doubt, a place of hesitation. Why would someone do this? Often because your growth threatens them in some way. Your confidence makes them uncomfortable with their own insecurities. Your progress highlights their stagnation. Now, there's something critical you need to understand about criticism that comes from hidden negativity. It's designed to sound reasonable. It's crafted to make you question yourself rather than question the critic. That's what makes it so dangerous and so effective. True constructive feedback empowers you. Criticism born from hidden dislike disempowers you. One points toward improvement, the other aims to maintain the status quo or even to diminish you. How can you tell the difference? Look for these patterns. Does the criticism come with specific, actionable suggestions? Or is it vague in general? Does the person seem genuinely happy when you succeed despite their concerns? Do they criticize you privately but praise others publicly for similar things? Is there a sense of satisfaction or pleasure behind their honesty? I worked with a man whose colleague constantly criticized his public speaking. Every presentation, every meeting, this colleague would pull him aside afterward with helpful feedback. But there was something unsettling about it. The criticism never acknowledged strengths, only weaknesses. It never came with specific suggestions, only vague concerns. One day, circumstances required this man to deliver an important presentation without his critical colleague present. Afterward, he received overwhelmingly positive feedback from others in the organization. When his colleague returned and heard about the success, his response was telling, well, they were probably just being nice. You know, there's still a lot you need to work on. That moment revealed everything. Someone who genuinely cares about your growth celebrates your success. Someone who criticizes from a place of hidden dislike finds ways to diminish it. This pattern of persistent criticism isn't always dramatic. It's often subtle. Cumulative, a drip of doubt here. A splash of skepticism there over time. It creates an erosion of confidence that can be devastating to your sense of self. Your willingness to take risks. Your ability to move boldly toward your purpose. Some of you listening right now are having revelations about certain relationships in your life. You're recognizing patterns you felt but couldn't quite name. That recognition isn't accidental, it's necessary for your next level of growth. Because when you can identify these patterns, you can begin to protect your spirit from their impact. You can begin to filter the feedback you receive, accepting what truly helps you grow while rejecting what's designed to hold you back. Remember this, not all input deserves equal weight in your life. Some voices should be amplified, others should be muted. And knowing which is which requires discernment. These first two signs, changed communication patterns and consistent criticism, are often the earliest indicators that someone close to you may harbor hidden negative feelings. They're subtle enough to be dismissible if you're not paying attention, yet significant enough to impact your confidence and clarity if you allow them unchecked influence. Now, as we prepare to examine the next two signs, I want you to hold this truth close. Recognizing these patterns doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you prepared. It doesn't make you judgmental, it makes you judicious about who you allow to influence your thinking, your confidence, your decisions. Because ultimately, this isn't just about identifying hidden negativity, it's about protecting the purpose for which you were created. It's about guarding your potential against those who, for whatever reason, would prefer to see it diminished rather than fully expressed. Let's move to the third sign that someone close to you might secretly harbor negative feelings: unusual competitiveness, especially in areas that matter to you. Healthy competition can push us to excel. But there's a different kind of competition that doesn't feel right because its motivation isn't mutual growth, but your diminishment. When someone consistently tries to outdo you specifically. When they can't seem to celebrate your wins without immediately mentioning their own similar or greater accomplishment. When they turn non-competitive situations into contests, pay attention. This behavior reveals something profound. Their sense of worth is somehow threatened by your success. And that threat creates a response that manifests as competitive behavior. I once knew two friends who worked at the same company but in different departments. Whenever one would share good news, a successful project, positive feedback from management, even a small win, the other would quickly shift the conversation to his own recent achievement, often exaggerating to ensure his accomplishments seemed more significant. If the first friend mentioned receiving praise for handling a difficult client well, the second would interrupt with a story about how he had saved an even bigger client relationship the previous week. If the first friend talked about a new skill he was learning, the second would mention how he had already mastered that skill years ago. This wasn't friendly banter or mutual celebration. It was a pattern of one-upmanship that revealed an uncomfortable truth. One friend's success made the other feel lesser. And rather than address that internal insecurity, he responded by trying to maintain a position of superiority. True friends celebrate your wins as if they were their own. They don't feel diminished by your growth. They feel genuinely happy for you. When someone can only respond to your success with stories of their own, when they seem unable to give you an uninterrupted moment in the spotlight, they're telling you something important about how they really feel. The fourth sign is perhaps the most revealing. They seem subtly pleased when you experience setbacks or failures. This can be incredibly subtle. It's rarely as obvious as someone saying, "I told you so," or openly celebrating your mishaps. Instead, it's often disguised as concern, as helpful analysis of what went wrong, as eager offering of advice for next time. But there's something in their energy, something in their eyes, something in their voice that doesn't quite match their words. There's a lightness to them after your setback that wasn't there before. There's an eagerness to discuss your failure that's different from how they engage with your successes. I remember counseling a man who couldn't understand why he felt so uncomfortable discussing his business challenges with a particular friend. On the surface, this friend said all the right things, expressing sympathy, offering advice, asking thoughtful questions. But something felt off. The man described feeling worse after these conversations. Not better. He sensed an undertone he couldn't quite name, but that left him feeling strangely diminished. As we explored the pattern, he realized something revealing. This same friend was notably absent when things were going well. He rarely responded to good news with enthusiasm. But when things went wrong, he was suddenly available, interested, engaged. The pattern told the truth that polite conversation concealed. This friend derived satisfaction from his struggles. The setbacks created a balancing of scales that the friend found comforting. The failures temporarily resolved the discomfort this friend felt about their comparative success. This is perhaps the most painful sign to recognize, because it reveals something fundamentally broken in the relationship. when someone takes subtle pleasure in your pain. There's a deeper issue that casual conversation won't resolve. These signs, unusual competitiveness and subtle satisfaction in your setbacks, often appear together because they spring from the same root. Both reflect a person who sees your relationship as somehow comparative rather than collaborative. Both indicate someone who measures themselves against you rather than alongside you. And both require the same response from you, a careful reassessment of how much influence this person should have in your life. How much of your truth you share with them. How much access they have to your vulnerable moments. Because someone who secretly gains satisfaction from your stumbles cannot be trusted with your dreams. Someone who feels threatened by your success cannot guide you toward your fullest potential. This doesn't mean you need to create conflict or dramatic confrontation. It simply means you need to recognize the reality of the relationship and adjust accordingly. Protecting your spirit and your purpose from influences that would diminish rather than enhance them. The fifth sign that someone close to you might secretly harbor negative feelings is strategic information withholding. This is when someone consistently fails to share information that would benefit you, especially when they had clear opportunity to do so. Information is power, and withholding useful information is a passive form of sabotage that's particularly difficult to confront because it's defined by absence rather than presence. I didn't know you needed that information. It didn't occur to me to mention it. I assumed you already knew. These are the common defenses. And they make this behavior especially troubling because it creates a situation where you begin to doubt your own perceptions. You wonder if you're being paranoid, overly sensitive, reading too much into honest oversight. But patterns tell the truth. When someone repeatedly fails to share information that would help you about an opportunity, about a problem, about something said behind your back while readily sharing other types of information, pay attention. I work with a talented young professional whose colleague never informed him about important meetings until the last minute, leaving him poorly prepared compared to others. This same colleague freely shared other workplace news and updates. The selective withholding created exactly the intended effect. It positioned the young professional at a disadvantage while maintaining plausible deniability about the intention. Remember, what happens consistently happens intentionally. Multiple oversights that follow a pattern are sending you a message about the relationship if you're willing to receive it. The sixth sign builds on this. They undermine your other relationships through selective information sharing. This behavior is particularly destructive because it affects not just your relationship with the person in question, but your entire social or professional ecosystem. It works like this. Someone who secretly harbors negative feelings toward you begins planting small seeds of doubt about you in your other relationships. They share unflattering stories about you, emphasize your mistakes when you're not present to provide context, or subtly question your motives, reliability, or character to others in your circle. This is rarely done overtly. Instead, it's couched in concern. I'm worried about how Thomas handled that client. Or in casual observation, have you noticed how Maria always makes everything about herself? These comments, when scattered strategically across your social or professional network, create a subtle shift in how others perceive you. And because they come from someone presumed to be your ally, they carry special weight. I once counseled a business owner who couldn't understand why her previously warm relationships with several vendors had cooled. She later discovered that her operations manager had been systematically undermining her reputation, suggesting to vendors that she was difficult to work with and financially unstable, neither of which was true. This behavior is particularly damaging because it creates distance in multiple relationships simultaneously, often before you're even aware it's happening. By the time you notice the change dynamics, significant damage may already be done. What makes this sign so revealing is that it demonstrates premeditation. Unlike a momentary expression of frustration or a careless comment, undermining someone's relationships requires planning and sustained effort. It reveals not just momentary negative feelings, but a consistent negative orientation toward you. The seventh sign that someone close to you secretly harbors negative feelings is what I call conditional support. This person will support you, but only within certain boundaries they've silently established. Only in ways that don't threaten their position or perception of themselves. Their support comes with invisible strings attached. They'll back your smaller endeavors enthusiastically, but become strangely distant when you pursue something truly significant. They'll champion your efforts until you begin to receive recognition that outshines them. They'll stand with you until standing with you costs them something. True support doesn't fluctuate based on your level of success or the attention you receive. It doesn't disappear when you begin to shine too brightly. But conditional support reveals its true nature precisely at these moments of breakthrough. The eighth and final sign is perhaps the most sophisticated. They offer help that isn't truly helpful. This person will volunteer assistance that subtly misaligns with your actual needs or goals. They'll offer help that sounds supportive but actually creates additional complications or diverts you from your path. Let me help you with that proposal. Just say, but the input takes your work in a direction that doesn't serve your vision. I'll connect you with some people. They offer. But the connections never materialize or aren't relevant to your needs. I'll handle that part for you. They promise. But their execution falls mysteriously short at critical moments. This behavior is particularly difficult to confront because the person appears generous and supportive on the surface. Questioning their help makes you seem ungrateful or suspicious. But again, patterns reveal truth. When someone's help consistently creates more problems than it solves, when their support reliably leads to complications or delays, they're sending you a message about how they truly feel. Let me share a story that brings these final signs together, a story about transformation and the power of recognizing hidden negativity. I worked with a woman named Rebecca who had developed a revolutionary approach to education that was gaining attention in her community. For years, her closest colleague, someone she considered a mentor and friend, had supported her work. But as Rebecca's methodology began to receive wider recognition, something shifted. This colleague began offering to help by representing Rebecca at important meetings, insisting she could articulate Rebecca's vision better to certain audiences. When opportunities arose for Rebecca to share her work more broadly, this colleague would volunteer to prepare her. But the preparation sessions always left Rebecca feeling oddly unsure of herself, second-guessing the very approach that was proving so effective. Most confusingly, this colleague would publicly praise Rebecca's work while privately suggesting modest adjustments that, in retrospect, would have fundamentally altered what made her approach unique. The help being offered would have slowly transformed Rebecca's revolutionary methodology into something far more conventional and far less threatening to her colleague's own established position in the field. For months, Rebecca tried to reconcile her colleague's supportive words with the unsettled feeling these interactions left her with. She made compromises, incorporated some suggestions while resisting others, and tried to maintain the relationship despite growing tension. The turning point came when Rebecca was invited to speak at a prestigious conference, an opportunity that could significantly elevate her work. Her colleague immediately offered to co-present with her, suggesting that Rebecca wasn't quite ready for such a platform alone. In that moment, everything became clear. The pattern of conditional support, of help that subtly undermined, suddenly revealed itself for what it was. Rebecca declined the offer to co-present and delivered her presentation alone. It was a resounding success that launched her work to a new level of recognition. More importantly, Rebecca began to carefully reconstruct her professional network, moving this colleague from her inner circle to a more peripheral position. She didn't create drama or confrontation. She simply recognized the reality of the relationship and adjusted accordingly. Within a year, Rebecca's work had expanded beyond what she had previously thought possible. Looking back, she realized that the subtle undermining from someone she trusted had been constraining her vision, making her doubt the very innovations that were her greatest strength. Here's what Rebecca's story teaches us about transformative action when you recognize these signs in your relationships. First, trust your perceptions. That unsettled feeling after certain interactions isn't imagination, it's your spirit's intelligence warning you about something your mind may not yet fully comprehend. Second, look for patterns. A single instance might be a mistake or misunderstanding. Repeated patterns reveal true intentions. Third, adjust access, not just association. You don't always need to dramatically end relationships where you've recognized these signs. Instead, thoughtfully adjust how much influence the person has on your decisions, your confidence, your vision. Fourth, focus on your purpose, not the problem. When you recognize hidden negativity, channel your energy not into confrontation but into pursuing your vision with renewed clarity and determination. Fifth, surround yourself with genuine supporters. The antidote to hidden negativity isn't isolation but authentic connection with people who truly celebrate your growth. When you apply these principles, something remarkable happens. The very relationships that once limited you lose their power. The subtle negativity that once eroded your confidence no longer reaches you. And you find yourself moving toward your purpose with a freedom and certainty that transforms not just your future, but the futures of all you're called to impact.